friend, the incomparable Hercule Poirot, couldn't resist a little lecture. He called it my English tendency toward reckless decisions. But rest, as it turned out, was not on the agenda. Our destination was a small coastal town in Devon, a trip prompted by a most unusual letter. It was from a Mrs. Elizabeth Granville, a wealthy widow residing in a mansion as peculiar as her plea. She called it the Glass Palace, a name earned from a vast, modern glass wing that offered a stunning, uninterrupted view of the sea. In her letter, she claimed to hold a dangerous secret, one she would entrust only to Poirot, and only in person. The urgency was palpable. Upon our arrival, the sheer scale of the Glass Palace was breathtaking. It was a strange yet magnificent marriage of ancient, ivy-clad stone and gleaming, contemporary glass. We were greeted at the door by James Cooper, the head butler, a man whose reserved demeanor was as solid as the stone walls around us. Mrs. Granville herself was a woman of dignified grace, perhaps in her late 60s. She welcomed us with a warmth that seemed at odds with the fear in her eyes. It didn't take long for her to confess the source of her terror. She had been receiving threatening letters, anonymous notes warning her that she would soon pay for her past. The threats had escalated just days before arrival. Her beloved cat, a cherished companion, had been brutally killed. A clear and violent message. Poirot listened intently, his brow furrowed. His conclusion was swift and unsettling. The threat was not from some unknown outsider, but from within the household itself. That evening, over a tense dinner, we were introduced to the cast of characters living under Mrs. Granville's roof. There was Henry, the eldest son, a stern man visibly burdened by financial troubles. Then came Clara, his sister, whose gentle nature was overshadowed by a constant, nervous anxiety. Edward, the youngest son, had a reckless air about him, a man drowning in gambling debts. Also present was Margaret Howard, a quiet, unassuming relative who had lived with the family for years, her role in the household somewhat ambiguous. And finally Dr. Richard Lambert, the family physician, a frequent and trusted visitor. The air was thick with unspoken tensions, a web of secrets and resentments that Poirot's little gray cells were already beginning to entangle. The following morning, our unease curdled into outright panic. A scream echoed through the mansion, and we rushed to find the source. Mrs. Granville was dead. She was found in the glass wing, slumped in her favorite chair, a letter opener plunged through her heart. The scene was as chilling as it was perplexing. The door to the glass wing was locked from the inside. There were no signs of a struggle, no shattered panes, no hidden entrances. It was a classic, seemingly impossible locked room mystery. The local constabulary was called, but it was Poirot who took command of the situation, his mind already whirring with possibilities. He began his methodical questioning of each resident, and soon, motives began to surface like sharks in a feeding frenzy. Everyone, it seemed, had a reason to want Mrs. Granville gone. Henry, the eldest, was on the brink of financial ruin and stood to inherit a significant fortune. His mother's tight grip on the family finances had been a constant source of friction. Edward, the gambler, had recently been threatened with disinheritance over his spiraling debts. His mother's death was his only escape from utter ruin. Clara, the gentle daughter, was desperately in love with a man her mother had forbidden her to marry, believing him to be beneath their station. With her mother gone, she was free to follow her heart. Even the quieter members of the household were not above suspicion. Margaret Howard, the distant relative, displayed a hidden tension, a deep-seated resentment that occasionally flickered behind her timid facade. And Dr. Lambert, the trusted physician, was forced to admit that he had lied about his whereabouts on the night of the murder, though he vehemently denied any involvement. Each person had a secret, a motive, and a potential opportunity. Poirot, however, was not one to be distracted by the obvious. He turned his meticulous attention to the scene of the crime. While the police were baffled by the locked door, Poirot was examining the minute details. In the glass wing, he found two clues that others had overlooked. The first was a minuscule trace of black ink on the carpet near the victim's chair, ink that perfectly matched the threatening letters Mrs. Granville had received. The second clue was even smaller, almost insignificant, a tiny metal button, tarnished with age, engraved with a distinctive, unfamiliar symbol. It seemed to belong to no one in the household. These small discoveries sent Poirot down a new path of inquiry, one that led him far beyond the walls of the Glass Palace and deep into the past. His investigation unearthed a shocking truth. Secret Mrs. Granville had guarded for over 30 years. Her name wasn't Granville at all. She had once been Elizabeth Reinhardt, the wife of a wealthy Austrian businessman, a man named Konrad Reinhardt who had died under mysterious circumstances in Vienna 3 decades prior. After his death, she had fled to England with her children, adopted a new identity, and built a new life, hoping to leave the shadows of her past behind. This revelation changed everything. The motive for murder was no longer just about inheritance or forbidden love, it was rooted in a long-forgotten crime. Poirot then revealed another startling fact from the autopsy report. While the stab wound was gruesome, it was not the true cause of death. Mrs. Granville had been poisoned. Traces of potassium cyanide were found in her system, likely administered in the wine she drank during her final dinner. The stabbing was a macabre piece of theater, a deliberate misdirection designed to create the locked room puzzle and throw everyone off the scent of the poison. And what of the locked room? Poirot explained it with elegant simplicity. The killer had used a thin, dark thread, nearly invisible against the dark wood of the door. By looping it around the bolt on the inside and pulling it through the small gap beneath the door, they could slide the bolt into place from the outside, creating the illusion of an impossible crime. With all the pieces in place, Poirot gathered the anxious household in the grand drawing room for the final, dramatic reveal. He calmly recounted the events, the motives, and the secrets he had uncovered, letting the tension build with every word. One by one, he dismissed the suspects. Henry's desperation was for money, not murder. Edward was a fool, but not a killer. Clara's love was a powerful motive, but she lacked the nerve for such a cold-blooded act. Then, Poirot's gaze settled on the one person everyone had overlooked. The quietest, most unassuming member of the household. The killer, he announced, was Margaret Howard. The room fell into a stunned silence. Margaret, pale and trembling, seemed the least likely culprit. But Poirot laid out the story, a tale of jealousy and revenge that spanned 30 years. Long ago, in Vienna, Margaret had been a young servant in the Reinhardt household. She had become infatuated with Konrad Reinhardt, her employer. Consumed by a toxic mix of jealousy and unrequited love, she had poisoned him, hoping to clear a path to his affections that was never there. Elizabeth Reinhardt, now Mrs. Granville, had discovered Margaret's crime. But instead of turning her over to the authorities, she had protected her. She took the blame upon herself, becoming a fugitive to save the young woman she had taken under her wing. This act of mercy, however, did not inspire gratitude. Instead, it forged a bond of guilt and resentment that festered for decades. Margaret was forever indebted to the woman whose life she had ruined, and she grew to hate her for it. Years later, that hatred finally boiled over. Margaret decided to eliminate her benefactor, the constant reminder of her terrible secret. She sent the threatening letters, killed the cat, and staged elaborate murder, hoping to frame one of the children. But she made one fatal error. The small, tarnished button Poirot had found was from an old servant's uniform she had worn in Vienna, direct link to the past she had tried so hard to bury. It was the button that betrayed her. As the police led a broken Margaret Howard away, I turned to Poirot, admitting my complete disbelief. She seemed the weakest of them all, Poirot, I confessed. A gentle smile played on his lips. "Ah, Hastings, that is precisely why she so nearly succeeded," he replied, tapping his temple. "Often, the most dangerous criminals are those who hide behind